This is hard. So, shadow work is a deeply personal practice. There is no shadow work that I know of that can be done on behalf of another person. This is a journey that each and every one of us has to, should we choose, undertake on our own to dig deeper into our unconscious and embrace the parts of ourselves that we have historically tried to sweep under the rug or kind of ignore or shove to the side. So today I kind of wanted to do a couple of things. And one is to kind of talk through a new deck that's recently come out. It is the Dark Reflections Tarot by muci design, and it's a really, really interesting deck for a variety of reasons. One, the artwork is incredible. Two, the insights available in the guidebook are really interesting, and I like that there are questions at the bottom of every card, meaning to kind of explore deeper. And third, I wanted to do or show kind of a sample reading of what it might be like to use this deck. Again, shadow work being a very intense and personal journey, I had to be really selective about what kind of reading I wanted to do and be able to share with the world. So I know there are some questions out there asking, well, how do you read with this deck? How do you interpret the cards? I figured I would add my own thoughts to the mix, and I hope it's helpful for you. So it's really interesting. Whenever you start reading, especially if in shadow work, there are things that you think you need to address, and then there's the stuff that you actually need to address. And what's interesting about all of this is that the cards seem to know the difference. And when you try to steer something in the way that you want it to go, it doesn't work. And so you're going to see a different kind of uncovering shame reading where, instead of trying to steer the ship, I'm just along for the ride in this case, which I think is a really interesting value that those cards bring, at least in this particular reading. But it seems like time and time again, every time I do a reading, it's always what I actually need to hear, not what I want to hear. So, let's dig in. When I look at this, it's what shame are you hiding? And the Seven of Swords implies self-deception or covert activities in deceiving others, which, interesting because I've started this channel and I haven't really told anyone I'm super close to. I've told some folks that I'm just getting to know, and knowing that okay, I feel safe. They don't know anybody who I've known for a really, really, really long time. I come from a Judeo-Christian upbringing, and this channel is definitely against some of those teachings and upbringings. But I'm kind of getting tired of hiding. Should that day come where I have to have that conversation, I will. But right now I'm still kind of in the broom closet, as it were. When did this feeling start? And it's the devil reversed, which usually when you look at the devil, it talks about addictions and being bound. I could look at this intuitively as the devil is very, very clearly associated with the Judeo-Christian. Arriving to and leaving is kind of the way that I'm looking at this card. But yeah, I think visually when I chose to fall away from the church and everything there. Okay, how does it affect my life? Is the Wheel of Fortune also reverse. So the Wheel of Fortune is kind of to everything there's season. So when it's accepted, it's accepting responsibility, accepting change, self-awareness, internal growth, broader perspective, and starting fresh. I mean, that's kind of how it feels. Like I'm starting fresh in my life. I'm starting to finally create the life that I've always wanted, which feels really good. So how does it affect my relationships? Three of Cups. This one I'm kind of curious about. Coming together, celebration, being thankful, abundance, happiness, becoming more playful, having fun, and new friendships. And you know what? That's already happening. I've made a couple new friends recently, and they are wonderful people. I'm not feeling the isolation anymore, which is weird because you'd think in going to a church you wouldn't feel that isolation, but man, do I ever. Every single time. Maybe it's just not the space for me. Finally, how can I forgive myself and move on? Forgive myself of my own deception? Having confidence, logical and rational thinking, harmonious relationships, trust, calm, humility, and progressive. By working on this self-deception thing, and by letting go of that, it all sounds like good stuff. Coming out of the shadow into the light. Everything is leaning this direction, and pretty hard, all things considered, given I've got two major arcana, plus I would say this is kind of like an extended arcana, major arcana. Yeah, wow. Okay. So general feedback on the deck. I'm winging this. I don't really write a lot of scripts, so bear with me if there's lots of weird little blips as we go along. This deck has been really interesting. I've used it a handful of times over the last few weeks, and I've also been working and comparing and contrasting with other decks in my library of cards, and this one provides a really unique value and benefit. So when I look at these cards, like the Hermit, so when we're looking at a standard tarot deck, the Hermit tells you in the upright position, it's time to spend some time alone to figure some things out. In the reverse position, it talks more about, maybe you're spending too much time alone, time to go reintegrate with society. But the Hermit here, and I'll read the excerpt, doesn't really go that direction. So if we're interpreting this as the repressed being the upright form of this, it's a fear of isolation, fear of boredom, fear of introspection, meaningless activity, external dependencies, and running away. The light in the lantern is out, right? They are not seeking, they are not moving anywhere. The Hermit is stationary. These cards can't just be interpreted as the reverse for a standard deck. Additionally, when it's accepted, which I interpret as the reversed order position, inner strength and solitude, accepting life, finding individual light, inner wisdom, accepting solitude as freeing. So instead of, the usual tarot deck saying, hey, it's time for some introspection, time to go figure some things out, this looks a little more into, do you have a fear of exploring these things on your own? Do you have a fear of acknowledging that shadow in your life? So really interesting card. There's some other cards in here, like the Three of Cups is another great one. Three of Cups is another really interesting one because that one in the traditional tarot talks about friendship, right? And in reversed, it can indicate, three's a crowd. In this book, it's still similar, right? That's togetherness, celebrations, all these things. So it's not a one-to-one reversal. It's got a unique set of interpretations. And I think it's worth reading both upright and reversal readings. I think it provides an extra layer of context and meaning. So that's the biggest takeaway for me. Be careful of interpreting the Dark Reflections deck as simply an opposite of Rider-Waite-Smith. Some other little bits and pieces on this. The cardstock after a few weeks is still holding up. I have kind of marred my edges a little bit because I was less than careful with shuffling. I thought I was, and I snagged it anyway. So I may always know that this one is the Nine of Cups because of that little mark, but in time, I'm sure they'll all get kind of marked up on the sides. So thanks for joining me on this little journey today. Example readings are challenging, especially in the shadow work area, but I hope today's reading helped provide context on what kinds of questions to ask, how to approach the cards, and how to approach readings in general. The one I chose I thought was pretty interesting because I had one situation in mind and the cards took me an entirely different direction, and it was the direction I actually needed to go. It's funny how tarot works like that. Thank you for being here with me, and I really enjoy sharing this information with you. If you like what you see, hit the thumbs up, give it a like, drop a comment below if there are any questions or other feedback that you would have for the video. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.